Ukraine war. Serbia uproar over Wagner mercenaries recruiting for Russia. A Russian news video claiming to show Serbian volunteers training to fight alongside Russian troops in Ukraine has prompted outrage in Serbia, exposing its complex relationship with Moscow. Russia's Wagner mercenary group made the Serbian-language videos to encourage recruitment for the war. Serbia's president, Aleksandar Vučić, reacted angrily on national TV. "Why do you, from Wagner, call anyone from Serbia when you know that it is against our regulations?" he said. Critics frequently accuse Serbia of prioritizing its long-standing friendship with Russia over its ambition to join the EU. But what has emerged in recent days in Belgrade shows that the picture is not so black and white. Hinting at less than rosy relations with Moscow, President Vučić said that not only was Serbia neutral regarding the war in Ukraine, but that he had not spoken to Russian President Vladimir Putin for many months. It is illegal for Serbians to take part in conflicts abroad. The number of Serbian recruits involved does not appear to be significant. Some did fight alongside Russian forces in Ukraine in 2014, but not with any sort of official endorsement. In fact, Serbian courts convicted more than 24 people for taking part in fighting on foreign battlefronts. On Thursday, a Belgrade-based lawyer and anti-war groups filed criminal complaints against the Russian ambassador as well as the head of Serbia's State Security and Information Agency, BIA, for allegedly recruiting Serbians for the Wagner Group. In Belgrade, where provocative murals are numbingly common, the Wagner Death's Head emblem appeared on a city center wall last week. It was signed by the People's Patrols, an extreme right-wing organization which has previously staged sparsely attended pro-Russia rallies. None of the mainstream political parties have even hinted at support for the invasion of Ukraine. Indeed, Serbia has consistently voted in favor of resolutions at the United Nations condemning Russia's aggression. President Vučić this week made Belgrade's position crystal clear. "For us, Crimea is Ukraine, Donbass is Ukraine, and it will remain so." That stance has not been enough to impress the European Parliament, because Serbia has repeatedly refused to impose sanctions on Russia. For the second time, MEPs have passed a resolution calling for the suspension of membership negotiations until Serbia agrees to sanctions. For as long as the EU showed little enthusiasm for expanding the bloc to include the countries of the Western Balkans, it made sense for Serbia to maintain friendly ties with Moscow. It reminded Brussels that Belgrade had other options: cheap gas supplies, Gazprom's majority ownership of Serbia's oil company NIS, and Russia's refusal to recognize Kosovo's independence were practical reasons to stay on good terms. But the invasion of Ukraine has shifted perceptions. Belgrade was not impressed when President Putin referred to Kosovo's unilateral declaration of independence as justification for recognizing the independence of areas of occupied eastern Ukraine. Meanwhile, Brussels belatedly realized that its reticence towards the Western Balkans was leaving room for Moscow to meddle. Accession talks for Albania and North Macedonia were swiftly unblocked, and Bosnia received candidate status. So if Serbia's president has been waiting for a moment to pivot decisively to the West, it might just have arrived. He has been warning of very difficult conversations with EU and US special envoys, and says he will address Serbians over the weekend to tell them what is required and expected from Serbia regarding Kosovo and sanctions against Russia. Mr. Vučić has made similar remarks before, without ever committing to a major policy change. But this week he once again reiterated that Serbia's trajectory was towards the West. "I know that EU is our path," he told B. What is Russia's Wagner group of mercenaries in Ukraine? Some 20,000 mercenaries are believed to be fighting for Russia in Ukraine. They belong to an organization called the Wagner Group, which has been used in Russian military operations all over the world. Who are the Wagner Group's mercenaries? The Wagner Group's fighters now make up about 10% of Russia's forces in Ukraine, according to UK government officials. Thousands are raw recruits from Russian prisons. The Wagner Group started recruiting in large numbers after the Kremlin had trouble finding people for the regular army, UK intelligence officials say. It's thought the organization had previously had only 5,000 fighters, most of whom were former soldiers, including many from elite regiments. The Wagner Group has also adopted a higher profile, including a large new headquarters in St. Petersburg. It is openly recruiting in Russian cities, on billboards, and is being named in Russian media as a patriotic organization, says Dr. Samuel Ramani, of the Royal United Services Institute think tank. What is the Wagner Group doing in Ukraine? The Wagner Group has been heavily involved in Russian efforts to capture the city of Bakhmut, in eastern Ukraine. Ukrainian troops say Wagner fighters have been sent into attacks in large numbers over open ground, with many killed as a result. Wagner Group commander requests asylum in Norway after Russia claimed to have captured the town of Soledar, near Bakhmut. A row broke out between its defense ministry and the Wagner Group over who should get the credit. At first, the defense ministry did not mention that the Wagner Group was involved in the fighting. However, it then conceded that its mercenaries had played a courageous and selfless role. How was the Wagner Group started? A BBC investigation into the Wagner Group highlighted the believed involvement of a former Russian army officer, Dmitry Yutkin. A veteran of Russia's wars in Chechnya, he is thought to have founded Wagner and named it after his former radio call sign. The current head is Yevgeny Prigozhin, a rich businessman nicknamed Putin's chef, because he provided catering for the Kremlin. Mr. Prigozhin used to deny any links to the Wagner Group, but now speaks openly about the group's operations in Ukraine. The Wagner Group's first operation was helping Russia annex Crimea in 2014, says Tracy German, professor of conflict and security at King's College London. Troops appeared on the streets of Crimea at the time in uniforms without badges or markings, and were known as the Little Green Men. Its mercenaries are thought to be some of the Little Green Men who occupied the region, says Professor German. After that, about 1,000 Wagner Group mercenaries helped Russian-backed separatist forces in eastern Ukraine fight the Ukrainian army. In the weeks before Russia's invasion, it is thought Wagner carried out false flag attacks to give the Kremlin a pretext for attacking. Russia supporting Wagner mercenary numbers soar. Where else is the Wagner Group operating? Since 2015, Wagner Group mercenaries have been in Syria, fighting alongside pro-government forces and guarding oil fields. There are also Wagner Group mercenaries in Libya, supporting the forces loyal to General Khalifa Haftar. The Central African Republic (CAR) has invited the Wagner Group to guard diamond mines, and it is thought to be guarding gold mines in Sudan. The government of Mali, in West Africa, is using the Wagner Group against Islamic militant groups. Yevgeny Prigozhin is thought to make money from Wagner Group operations abroad. The U.S. Treasury says he uses its presence to enrich mining companies which he owns and has placed them under sanctions. An unnamed White House spokesman told Reuters that Mr. Prigozhin may want the Wagner Group to capture Bakhmut so he can control salt and gypsum mines in the area. What crimes is the Wagner Group alleged to have committed? In Jan. Russia supporting Wagner Group mercenary numbers soar. Fighters from Russia's mercenary Wagner Group have ballooned from 1,000 to nearly 20,000 in Ukraine, British government officials say, a sign of Russia's growing reliance on the military contractor in support of its invasion. Russia is widely believed to be struggling to recruit soldiers and maintain morale. The West estimates Russia has lost tens of thousands of soldiers, and President Vladimir Putin launched a recruitment drive in September to boost numbers. Meanwhile, Russia has suffered a series of setbacks on the battlefield, and UK officials believe Russia is turning to the Wagner Group as a consequence. The private military company is now actively promoting its role in the war. As is its main backer, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the man once known as Putin's chef. But, so far, Wagner's bark seems to be proving worse than its bite. The BBC has been briefed by UK officials who've been tracking the activities of the Wagner Group. They say the group is now playing a much higher profile role in the war in Ukraine. But officials add that Wagner has also traded quality for quantity, and is now facing the same challenges and losses on the battlefield as the wider Russian military. Recruiting from prisons. Wagner's influence and presence has only got stronger, as Russia's invasion plans have stuttered, stalled and suffered setbacks. In March 2022, Wagner was thought to have sent an initial force of just over 1,000. But, according to UK officials, that number has now grown to more than 20,000, around 10% of the total Russian forces on the ground. Wagner's inflated ranks are linked to its targeted recruitment of convicts in Russian prisons. UK officials say open-source estimates suggest that the numbers of convicts in Russian prisons fell by over 23,000 in the 2 months leading up to November 2022, the period in which it was recruiting. Many convicts are believed to have joined Wagner, though there are no precise numbers. In return, they have been told they'll get paid and have their sentences commuted after serving 6 months on the front line. Whilst Wagner claims to pay compensation to the families of those killed in action, there are reports some receive nothing. UK officials say there's been a pivot from quality to quantity. In the past, Wagner was believed to recruit mostly experienced former soldiers, including from Russian military intelligence, known as the GRU, and ex-special forces. Wagner's group field commander, Lieutenant Colonel Dmitry Yutkin, was an officer in the GRU Spetsnaz Special Ops. But UK officials say that Wagner is now far from an elite force. In recent months, Wagner has taken a high-profile role in the brutal assault of Bakhmut in Ukraine's eastern Donbass region. A recent UK Defense Intelligence assessment highlighted Wagner's tactics. It said Wagner was using large numbers of poorly trained convicts, which it viewed as expendable. It said they were likely given just a specific, limited objective, like assaulting a building, without being allowed to deviate from the plan. The UK intelligence assessment said those who deviated were likely threatened with summary execution. UK officials say needless and indiscriminate violence is a hallmark of the group. Wagner recently released a video of one of its members bludgeoning an alleged deserter to death, which underlines the other significant change in Wagner's approach. It's now actively courting publicity and promoting the brand. In July, Wagner launched its own channel on the social media platform Telegram. In September, it opened up a glitzy new headquarters in St. Petersburg, named PMC Wagner Center. It said it was for the generation of new ideas in order to increase the defense capabilities of Russia, including the sphere of information. UK officials say there's recently been a notable increase in information operations by Wagner in Ukraine. Its leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, once threatened